All right. Okay. Our discussion today is based on the lecture that we attended on cultural mapping by Miss Janet Pillay. So based on that discussion, my first question to you is: does culture matter to you? Does the idea of having a culture matter to you? Like, think about your day-to-day life. Think about your, from the time you wake up till the time you sleep, from the beginning of the year, January, till the end of the year. Is there any aspect of your day-to-day life in which culture appear significant or important? I give you an example. Like when a baby is born, every culture will have their own special celebration. They will have their own ceremony, right? The naming ceremony, the various ceremonies. The Muslims will have their own ceremony. Alice, do you all have any particular ceremony when a baby is born, or maybe on the 7th day or on the 40th day? Is there any particular event or ceremony or even prayers that take place? Anything?
Yes, we do have. We have after the a baby, maybe 100 day. Yeah, after the baby is born 100 day, and we have a ceremony for the baby, and invite some relatives, friends to celebrate it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What about the Kurds? What about Salim? What is your
Yeah, doctor.
communities? How do you celebrate the birth of a baby, or
To
like,
tell the
is there any
truth,
particular event?
yeah, to tell the truth, doctor, the culture is different from one area to another area. Let me talk about my area, especially it's a religious one, and usually people don't celebrate, and many of them consider celebration is a kind of something unwanted, and others celebrate. They usually sacrifice and present, as we call it, qurban.
Yep.
I mean, they distribute meat and make sometimes a banquet or a big banquet, a big meal, and some people, invite and expect people. By the occasion of that, one of the members of the family came, a newcomer, as we say. So it's different from one area to another area. And believe me, in my family, till now, we don't celebrate birthdays. It's something strange. Yeah, but here, as a Muslim culture, as a Muslim, uh, uh, as a Muslim family, we see that this is something has not related to Islam. That's why my father said this has nothing to do with you as a Muslim. So please leave these things to people who are concerned with that, like Christians. Sorry, with my respect to all religions, Christians and Yazidin and other religions. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Shah, Ruby, Fuzla, what about the Malaysian context? You all wanna enlighten our international friends? How do we celebrate? I mean, I'm assuming you all are Malays, right? Yeah. Okay. So how do the Malays celebrate the birth of a baby? What do you all remember from, like, maybe your nieces and nephews, or?
Let me just add on to Salim's point. I think we also slaughter animals. We call it akikah here. I'm not sure if it's the same thing or a naza, or I cannot remember. It has been going on. We usually sacrifice, not very vegetarian friendly, but there's always. So it used to be a goat or anything you can find in the village, lah. And it's always 7 days after. There's some shaving involved. What is it called? Oh my god, I can't remember. Cukur jambol. Yes. So I do also know that it's also, sometimes it's not really purely Islamic. It is also mixed with some local customs as well. I think in Kelantan, should I say this? So in Kelantan, a few decades ago,
Kelantan for Salim and
yeah.
Alice. Kelantan is it's a state in Malaysia. Okay, Kelantan. I'm from Penang. Penang is up north on the west coast, and Kelantan is up north on the east coast, on the peninsula. Okay, go ahead, Ruby.
Yeah.
Are you from Kelantan, Ruby?
Yes, I'm from Kelantan, so there was a lot of so before the streak, should I say it? Sorry. So before this, the strictness came about, my great grandfather used to carry a baby up a hill, as a form of gratitude, and then there would be a lot of, gulai kawah. Gulai kawah is when you cook a lot of meat together.
Pots, in a
In a
huge
big pot. Yeah. So, but now they don't do it because they say that it's haram and it's not. Yeah. But then we used to have that as well. So I guess now it translates into a lower scale, more Sharia compliant celebration. Yeah. So that's all.
Shah, did you want to add? Where are you from, Shah?
I'm from here,
From
as in Selangor.
Selangor. Okay.
But yeah, my father is from Kelantan as well, and my mother is from Perak. So, but the one that I remember is, I'm not sure what is cukur jambul in English.
Basically, the shaving of the baby's
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah.
After
So that
yeah.
also happens. Yeah.
Yeah, so after a few days, this is for Salim and Donglai. Usually, right? The picture that I always see is we pass the baby from one man to another in a circle. I think they shave like bits by bits, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, like the sideburn, I think.
So just gentle removing of the hair from the baby.
Yep.
And as they do that, they say some things. They maybe say
Yeah.
prayers for the baby. Yeah.
But I noticed
Usually
it's
the
just
salawat, I
men.
think.
Yeah, the salawat. Yeah, but it's only men doing it, lah. That's, I think, what I wanted to add to Ruby's point. Yeah.
Fuzla, did you want to add something? Whereabouts are you from? Whereabouts are you from?
I'm from KL.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think there's also this thing where we put like tahnik, we put some dates like on the roof of the baby's mouth, and usually it is done by someone that is important in the community. So
Something sweet, right? The dates to
Yeah.
resemble or symbolize something sweet put into the baby's mouth, just gentle, so that the baby may speak. So it has some significance, but it is also based on hadith, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. So no, just from that little anecdote, when we talk about, when somebody is born and when somebody dies, what are the different cultural rites that is done onto them? One of the novels that you will be reading, The Corpse Washer by Sinan Antun, focuses on that, the end of somebody's life, and how at the end of somebody's life, what is the society responsible to do? What's the right that is responsible towards that deceased, the one who has passed on, right? So it's the responsibility of those around us to upkeep that part of, be it the religious culture or even just the way of life of the society. But I'm coming back to you because you all haven't answered the question: is culture important to you? If somebody said today that, okay, for the next 48 hours you cannot practice your culture, would that matter, or would you like, so what? Or would you like, oh my God, how can you say something like this? Astaghfirullah, I'm just kidding. But what is culture to you? I'm going to start with Salim. Is culture important to you?
Really good question. In fact, some of the cultures considered. Let me talk about my environment or my space where I am living. some of them are haram. That's why many people blame us for doing that, because it has nothing to do with the Quran and Sunnah.
Right.
And they said, "Oh, this is nothing, has nothing to do with Islam. Why you are doing that? Why you are celebrating birthdays? Why you are doing, for example, blah blah blah." And usually, many religious people in my environment, they stress on doing some specific actions, like, for example, presenting aqiqah. I mean, slaughtering an animal, and something else I would like to refer to. They usually cut the hair of the baby, and instead of that hair, they usually buy a piece of gold according to the weight of the hair, and sometimes piece of silver. So, in my point of view, culture is very important, because if you don't follow such a culture, you will be blamed by the others. Thank you.
So the way Salim projects it is that culture has a kind of an expectation, external expectation, societal expectation, communal expectation, right? So you are living, you become the bearer of the culture because society demands that from you, right? What about Alice? What about in China? Like, is culture big? I know we celebrated your Chinese New Year a couple of months back, and it was also celebrated in Malaysia because we have Chinese population here as well. And I know the reunion dinner is very important, right? On the eve of Chinese New Year, and the kind of food that you eat, you have to have different types of delicacy. This is how it is in Malaysia. This is what we understand. So tell us how culture is important to you in your society.
First is, as you say, is the Spring Festival, and the reunion dinner is very, very important in our culture. And before the eve of the Spring Festival, and we must go home, no matter where we are and how far we are. We must try to go home. If something happened that we can't go home, is very feel very sorry and regret. Yeah. And second, I think I can't live without I can't live without culture, because I think culture shaped me from when I was a child. And when I was eating, I was taught not to point at others with my chopsticks. And I can't. I try to be quiet when eating. Don't speak, and don't make noise when eating. Yeah.
So
Think,
so culture is a way of life.
yes.
So earlier we heard from Salim, one operational definition of culture is societal expectations, and what society expects from you in terms of you are part of the society, you must behave accordingly. So that is one definition. Another definition is it's your daily practice. You're using the chopstick, you're not supposed to point with the chopstick, so that is an aspect of your culture. You're not supposed to speak when you're eating, that's an aspect of your culture. Congregating for spring festival, is it spring, the eve of spring festival? Alice, are you still with us?
Yes, doctor. Hello, hear me?
Yeah. Okay, so what else? Tell me your definition, Fuzla. I'm just going around this way.
For me, it's a little bit similar to Alice. It comprises of things that I do in daily life. I think culture is like a part of my identity, and if I were to imagine that I cannot practice my culture, does that mean that I cannot eat the food that I like rice? Like as a Malay, it's a
Staple.
staple. Yeah, you cannot live without eating rice at least like a day, once a day, right? So that, and then not wearing shoes in your house.
Right.
It's actually like little things that we see as something normal
Right.
is also a part of our culture. Yeah,
Right.
because it's different from other people. Some people wear shoes in their house. We don't wear shoes in our house. So, I think culture is actually very important because it's in like little things in our lives.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Ruby, did you want to add anything?
Oh, yeah. Well, everything they said, I think, apply to my life as well. But I would also like to add, I'm not sure how to phrase this, a system of reward and punishment. So there's this culture. So if you follow, I follow because I want to get rewarded. But if we have to be honest, I'm sure there are parts of our culture that we do not like as well. So when that happens, so this culture thing decides, do we belong to, I'd say, the family as the main unit that enforces culture, and then if we don't follow, then we're the outcast. So these things determines, who we are
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So the expectation is not as wide as society, but it is still there. So it's the family unit. And if you don't abide by the expectations of the family unit, you may come across as being an outsider, or you may be treated like you are an outsider. So in order to stay within the family unit, you must abide by the expectations of the family. Right? Shah, did you want to add?
I think, yeah, Fuzla, she was saying the same thing that I thought, like, because doctor, you remind me just now, like, the first day you wake up, I don't put shoes the minute I wake up. So I can't imagine myself doing that. But also because we're approaching Ramadan soon, um, I cannot imagine, like, because I have a big family, I cannot imagine, like, not giving, like gift giving, I would say. Yeah, so it's something that we just like to do. We like sharing things around. So you can't do that. That would like change a lot. So yeah, I think.
So aspects of your personality will also be affected when you take that culture away from you. So I want you to think about this. This is just a short session that I wanted to have with you based on the discussion just now, because the
Sorry,
speaker
Jackie.
talked about, yes,
Just may I add something simple?
yes, please, Salim.
Okay. In fact, culture becomes something changeable in my society, and people are now less strict than before. For example, in my city, when you make a celebration, a birthday celebration, if you don't make a celebration, many people start to, accuse you that you are an educated person. And where are you? You are in the 21st century and technology, and you have to keep pace with all this progress. And you are something, just we say, an old-fashioned person. So here in my city, day by day, these culture are changing day by day toward following the Western, let's say, society. Thank you.
Um, you know, we'll talk more when we do our parameters. But for now, suffice to say, if you think about the operational definition of culture, a few continuums come in mind. If you drew a line, like a straight line, on the one hand, you might have to take up Salim's point just now. On the one hand, you have the static, the other hand, you have the dynamic. So there are components of our culture that appears stuck in the past, but we kind of keep at it. We use it because it's part of our society's expectations, or family's expectations, or your grandparents' expectations, whatever, right? But then there are other aspects that are more dynamic, that seems to kind of evolve, that seems to integrate with other cultures, especially if you live in a multicultural society, right? maybe in the past, for instance, when you celebrated Eid, you ate these kind of food only. But now, maybe there are other types of food also at the dinner table for Eid. Maybe even pizza. Ugh, you never know. You know, somebody like, can we have pizza for Eid, please? Besides all the other things, right? That's just an example. So food is one element where cultural sensibilities appear to evolve, right? Salim and Alice, if you ever get a chance to come to Malaysia, you will see the different kind of cuisines, the different kind of dishes that we have in Malaysia. Eating is huge in this country. Our palate is rich, okay? So you may have the Western type of food, you may have the Middle Eastern type of food, you may have the Eastern, the Japanese, the Korean, the Chinese, and then you have the South Asian, the Indians, the Middle Eastern, and you have burgers, and you have the Europeans, you've got the pasta, and so we have it all. We have the entire spread. So I'm salivating talking about food. This is terrible. So that is a dynamic component. So when we talk about, like Fuzla will say, rice is staple in most Malaysian household, right? So rice is like staple. I think I could be wrong, but in Iraq it would be more bread. Salim, would that be right?
To tell the truth, sorry, yes, bread plus rice. And one very funny thing, during the first day of the Eid, they usually serve rice plus meat. Imagine in the morning, and it's something very heavy. But this is a traditional of Kurds, especially in the north of Iraq. Thank you.
In Malaysia, because Malaysia predominantly the Muslims are Malays, of the Malay ethnic background, but there are also Indian Muslim, because I'm an Indian Muslim. I don't practice the Indian Muslim culture. I'm just a Muslim, full stop. But there are Indian Muslims, you've got Chinese Muslims, you've got Punjabi Muslims, you've got blah, 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 blah. Various ethnic background, Muslims from various ethnic background. So the way you celebrate Eid through your eating habit alone will signal the difference between one community to another community. We all celebrate Eid, but what goes on the table, like my dad would like some cakes in the morning. He wants cakes. So it's like, you have to buy cake, you have to make sure you get, because the shops will be closed for Eid, so you have to make sure you have all that. So he needs to have his black coffee with cake before he goes off for his prayers. And he comes back, and then sometimes we might have roti canai, we might have putu mayam, we might have and then now that my mom's son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws are all Malays, so we have the lemang and we have the laksa, so our table filled with various delicacies based on different communities, because my household, my mom's household, my mom and dad's household are very multiracial. So it's not, and then you can't say, but that's not our culture. No, but the culture grows. It's okay. So who says we can't eat this and this and this and this? It's not wrong. So that element of dynamism. The second continuum, again, if you drew the line, the second continuum, based on what you all have said. So on the one hand, there is the private domain, and the other hand, there is the public domain, right? So what happens in the private domain might not be dictated by the culture, right? You all might do whatever you feel like doing, right? But in the public domain, when you have family, you have relatives, suddenly you must act the role, that you have to play the part, you have to do these things, right? For instance, Salim, how do you call your uncle in Arabic? Alice, how do you call your uncle on your mother's side?
On your mother's side, 舅舅.
Okay. Guys, how do you all call your uncles? Sorry? So Wan ke, apa ni? Pak Su ke, Pak Long ke, Pak Ngah ke?
In my family we put ayah long, ayah something, ayah name, ayah fill in the blank usually.
Ayah is father in
Yes.
Malay. Okay.
Yeah.
Salim and Alice. So Ruby, you all call ayah the name. Basically, instead of uncle, dad. You have many dads. So basically,
Yeah.
dad there means he's like a second dad to you, right?
Yes.
You've got your own dad, then you have all these people who can take the role of your dad in case anything happens, so they can step in, right? They have
Yes.
that father figure kind of a responsibility. Shah, how do you all call your uncles?
Basically my Angah, my Aci, my my Acu.
Right. So within that, and Fuzla, how do you call your uncle?
Pak Long, Pak Ngah, based on the order of the sibling.
Right. So just listening to that alone tells you in the public domain, how we address our elders are something that we teach our children as well. That's part of our culture, right? So relationships, through the terms that we use, children learn about relationships. So that you've got one level, the food, another level, the relationships. And through the relationships, you understand where you stand in the social hierarchy, right? You don't call that person by the first name. You will get shot. Don't even think about calling that person by their first name. But in private, amongst you and your cousins, you might drop into the first name, but that's different, right? But meaning if your cousin is older than you, right? Amongst you and your cousins, like you all talk among yourself. But in the family environment, you must call your cousin by the title, like big sister or big brother or whatever, something like that, right? So private domain and then public domain. And then the third continuum, third line, just draw a line. On the one hand, you have choice. And on the other hand, you have expectations. Okay? So I'm drawing these three simple continuums to give you a kind of a sense that when we're talking about culture, culture is a very abstract concept, but you can make it tangible. So Miss Janet talked about just now elements of intangible and tangible, aspects of culture that are tangible and aspects of culture that are intangible. So what we talked about just now are aspects of culture that are more tangible, that you can kind of like quantify these things because these are more important things. But if I asked you what it means, if I ask Salim, what does it mean to be an Arab? If I ask Alice, what does it mean to be a Chinese? If I ask Ruby, Shah, and Fuzla, what does it mean to be a Malay? What will your answers be?
Okay, doctor. To be an Arab, it means a person who speaks Arabic, number one. Number two, follow the traditions. Number three, wear the clothes, the decent clothes, not terrible clothes, since our society, refused, wearing terrible clothes, and at the same time, following some, a system in the life. For example, at the age of 7, you have to pray, and you have to follow some of the instructions. For example, inside or outside the family. Let me tell you one thing, please. It's very shame in my society to to address the person by his first name. It's very shameful, especially if he's something older than you. Even if it is not, if he's not older than you, it's shame. It's not polite to call him by first name. Thank you.
Okay, Alice.
I think first is to speak Chinese. no matter Mandarin or the local with local accent, is Chinese is okay, and maybe other language of other ethnic groups is okay. And the second is the skin color and your appearance, the skin color and the black hair, yeah, and third maybe have a Chinese ID card, yeah. And yeah, and know and follow the Chinese manners where you will get along with others.
Okay, ladies, how are y'all Malay? Okay, Fuzla first.
I mean, it's on our IC. So
That is cheating.
That
Okay.
is cop out. That's a cop out. It's on my ID card that I'm Malay, so I'm Malay. I don't have a choice.
yeah. So
That's it.
um I don't know if we can like, say how we are really, yeah. It's just,
It's a challenge,
you know,
right?
this, yeah, it's a challenge because like as a, we are not like, we cannot just say about like physical appearance or something because everyone is different, and then some of us are like mixed, some of us can be like um half Malay, half Chinese. Is that considered Malay or is that considered, so there's like, it's not a definite picture.
Right.
So yeah.
Ruby?
I used to be very sick of people because of my background. They keep on going to this constitutional legal definition, which really like, what does it mean? But to add on to Fuzla, the word Malay doesn't really impact me because a person like me views my Kelantanese identity to be more important. I mean, I live here. I've been living here for 10 years. But for me personally, and for I'm quite sure with my family, the Kelantanese identity, being a northern Malaysian, holds a higher importance than being a Malay in general. So usually, how do we know? Oh my God, it's bloodline. Are your parents fully Kelantanese? And do you have a place to go back to?
Pure-blooded
Yes.
Kelantanese. Oh.
I didn't know that that's bad until I moved out, when I was 12. When I was in primary school, it was very common to make fun of people for being orang luar out, outsider. So we say, "Oh, you outsider, you don't
Outsider
fit."
meaning your parents are not pure Kelantanese.
Yes, yeah. So you can be Malay. So we considered Chinese who can speak Kelantanese as one of us, but KL Malays, you're not one of us. So we consider so if you're a Kelantanese, Malay, Chinese, Indian, if you can speak the language, and just now when Miss Janet mentioned multicultural is more separated than intercultural, so I could see that happening when I was younger anyway lah. So yeah, I mean, but it's very bad. But that's how we know that we are Kelantanese, especially
Very
if you.
parochial. It's very parochial worldview, not ethnocentric. Because if it was
Yeah.
ethnocentric, then all Malays, all three of you, Shah, Ruby, and Fuzla, you all would be one big happy family. But
Yeah.
in the way things are being seen, it's more parochial, right?
Yeah.
So it's like Kelantan. It's a kind of a entity in itself.
Yeah, and then my late grandmother used to say this term because we were not allowed we were not allowed to marry a non-Kelantanese when my grandmother was alive. So she kept on mentioning orang tanah, people of your land, and that scared the hell out of me. So that was how I know I belong to this group, even though it's very
Right, right.
yeah.
Shah?
I'm actually blanking on this. Really, I'm actually blanking on this. It's hard for me to Oh, but it's also shameful lah, obviously.
But is it though? Because I don't associate with my ethnic heritage. I see myself as somebody who makes the choice from the cultures that is available, but Islam is my backdrop.
Yeah,
So
it's like
I fall
saying,
on that.
yeah,
You
it's
know?
like saying we're Muslim first, something like that. Because
Yes, yes.
yeah,
But
yeah, I
what does
think
it mean being Malay to you? Besides having a Malay name, and Fuzla says having it on
honestly,
your IC, you know, on your identity card.
first thing that comes to my mind is adab. What do you call it?
Manners.
Yeah, manners. I think when it comes to
What,
Malay
what
culture.
Alice said just now, the
Oh,
same. The
yeah, manners.
of being
Yeah, and our
Chinese.
behavior. And if we do this, it's way out of, you're not considered as, it's not appropriate, if I would say. Yeah, basically, like, it's customs as well that we have to abide and everything. Although, like, right now it's 2021, it's not so, rigid, but still, because I have friends from different places in Malaysia, it's some places really, really okay. Let me just tell you a story. My uncle passed away on January. So we have this. It was uncertain that the wife could go to the mosque with the family to see him for the last time, because there's this one man that I don't know who he is, but yeah, he told my auntie that no, you cannot go, this is wrong, and stuff. Yeah, but I don't know. And then when we arrived at the mosque, right, the ustaz told like asked my family, where's the wife, like where's my auntie? So we were kind of confused then. Like, is what rules that we should follow, stuff like that. Yeah, so I think abiding the customs and traditions are one thing that pops out in my mind first thing. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the reason I'm unpacking this in this rather detailed way is because when you come to read, the literary works that you will be reading, for instance, in this anthology, for instance, Mahaswita Devi's Dowli, there is a short story in this collection. It's the story of a boy from the higher caste in India, and he marries somebody from the untouchable, from somebody from the lowest caste in the Indian caste system. So the element of culture, especially the public domain culture, becomes really critical in that discussion, right? So when you read a text in which culture is an important character of the story, you need to be able to bring that schema. You need to have a schema of a previous knowledge of what does culture mean to me? How would I view culture? You must be able to do that. You cannot say, I don't know, I don't have an opinion. Because if you don't have an opinion, when you're reading a text, you're not able to do justice to the response that you bring to the text. So this is something I need you to be mindful of. Don't impose your cultural sensibilities on the text. Don't do that. But have an opinion, right? Have an opinion. And then when you're reading the story, compare how your opinion differs from this story's opinion, like that. So remember, every story allows you a point of connection to yourself, connection to other stories that you have read. Okay, so I just want to leave you with that thought, because I want us to consider this idea of culture. So from this point on, every story that you're reading, you can ask yourself, how important is culture in this story? Okay, if for instance you have read the Harry Potter series, is culture important in the series? Do you all know Harry Potter, the story? I know Alice knows. Shah, Ruby, Huzla. Salim, have you come across Harry Potter, either the movie or the story?
To tell the truth, no.
No? Okay. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'm just going to explain. There is this boy, I'm sure the rest of y'all can pitch in. Tell me the story. Tell me the story. Just a quick 1 minute summary of the story.
Once
Ruby.
upon a time, there was
No, too long. Once upon a time.
Okay,
is
so there
too
was
long.
this
Go
boy. This
straight
one
into
is
it.
called Harry Potter. Secretly, he would grow up to be one of the greatest wizard of all time. So from a lousy uncle auntie family, he moved to this magical alternative land. He attended a boarding school, very British style boarding school, and then he trained to be. No, he get he trained to be a wizard, and then there's an ugly enemy called he who should not be named, and that's it.
Okay. Was there culture in that story?
I didn't know that it was British culture, but now I do. I didn't know that having this cathedral and boarding school, summer break, and the tea thing. I didn't know that it was culture while when I watched it when I was younger, but now it is British culture.
So I think culture is an important part of the story. If you don't have that knowledge of the culture, you know the story on the superficial level, but you don't appreciate the deeper level. Miss Janet drew the iceberg, the image of the iceberg. You have the tip of the iceberg, that is the superficial. Then the deeper layers of the iceberg allows you to understand the story in more intricate ways. So when we read,
Sorry, doctor, can you give me one example of a specific British culture in the movie that we may know it, but we don't know that it is very quintessential?
humor, the wit and the humor, the very dry and witty humor, especially the uncle, the kind of things that he says, and it's just hilarious. It's that the humor is, especially if you've read stories like Enid Blyton's stories, you will get the British humor coming through. That's one. But also the kind of things that the tea and the cakes and the having meals, the Christmas dinners and those kinds of parts of their culture, right? That's number one. But when we read Born a Crime, when we read Corpse Washer, you will see how culture is an important character of the story. Because if you took that same story and you put it in another culture, the story will not be as impactful. So that's when you know culture is really important in this story. And if I don't know the the Iraqi culture in the Corpse Washer, if I didn't know the South African Black culture in Born a Crime, I would not be able to appreciate the story in its depth. That's the value of culture. Okay. So what I'm saying to you is when you're reading a story, you must ask yourself, is culture important in this context? If so, I need to find out. That's part of the context that I need to know more about before the story can make more sense to me, can come to life to me. Okay. But you must begin by asking the question yourself about culture, like what we have done just now. Okay. All right. So basically that's our session based on the discussion that it was just now.
Can I
But I
add
like,
something, doctor?
yes, please.
What you said really explained why I didn't understand some of the novels I bought. When you buy novels, right, and especially translated work, and for example, it won the Booker Prize or the Pulitzer Prize, so you bought it, and then when you read it, you didn't get anything at all. So I was wondering why didn't because I understood the sentences, but I didn't understand whatever that was happening, especially from Middle East and Eastern Europe or the Albania that area. So that explained a lot actually. So thank you, Doctor.
Yeah. And I also like what Miss Janet talked about just now, the culture as a product and culture as an adaptive force, right? So when you think about culture as a product is what we talked about just now. You know, you've got your food, you know, you've got certain things that you have to do, the naming of the child when the child is born and all the rest of it. But culture as an adaptive force, that's the dynamism of culture, right? How culture can be used to kind of promote certain changes in society, right? Relationships, intercultural relationships, right? So we're going to explore this further in the coming weeks through the text that we are reading. But I just want to leave you with the idea that whatever text that you're reading, you must ask yourself, besides the characters in the story, the conflicts and the issues of the story, also ask, is culture important in this story? And if so, Nina wants to be part of the class. That's Nina, by the way. If culture is important, which culture is the writer representing? Which culture? Like, for instance, Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, one of the novels that we're going to read. His father is Swiss white. His mother is Sosa black. So he is mixed race. He's bicultural. So which culture does he associate with? So that's something we're going to have to also think about, because Miss Janet talked about the third space, right? Like, my daughter is a Malay Chinese Indian mix. My husband's Malay Chinese. So which space will she gravitate towards to find her sense of identity? That's why I asked the lot of you, the five of you, how do you view your culture, right? Sometimes, especially when you're living in cities, you have a kind of an assimilation of other cultures. Ruby, you've been in Selangor for the last 10 years, you say. So you've moved out of the Kelantanese mindset and you may be a little bit more open to other cultures coming in. Astaghfirullah, I'm sure, you have to say all that. But I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. All right, I jest. But that element of the third space, especially in a multicultural society, which is why you notice between Salim and Alice, and when they talked about what being Chinese and being Arab, being Kurd means to them, compared to the three of you, what being Malay means to you, it becomes a little bit more complex. It's not a straightforward answer, right? I think it's largely because we live in a multicultural society. This exposure to different cultures, not just the Asian cultures, but also the Western cultures. And now through the social media, you've got the global culture also coming through, right? So that element of our cultural sensibility is not monocultural. It tends to be more multicultural, right? So there are times when we need to kind of shift gear and say, maybe the writer is representing that aspect of his multicultural perspective, like Trevor Noah in Born a Crime, right? Sinan Antun is a Christian Iraqi writing about a Shia Muslim experience of performing washing of the deceased. So, he's coming from the outsider perspective, not from the insider perspective, right? So I want you to kind of think about those kind of layers of representation. So it's not as simple of this person is from this race, he or she writes about this race. It doesn't work like that, right? Especially now when writers also are exposed to global cultures. So their novels and their fiction will represent their worldview, just like your reading will represent your worldview. And remember last week when we did the comparison between Identity Card by Mahmoud Darwish and Langston Hughes's I Too, each of you had a very unique take on the reading, right? Even when the week before, when I asked you for your response to I2 by Langston Hughes, each of you had your own unique take. It's because of your worldview that it allows you to see the world from a very wide lens, not a narrow lens like this. Okay, so basically that's the session that we have. I'm just going to go around and if you've got any questions for me or if you've got any comments to add, I'll start with Shah.
Sorry, doctor, I want to add something
Yes,
about
okay, Alice.
the traditional ceremony for the new birth, because I'm the youngest in my family, and my cousin don't have a son or doctor, so I'm really not familiar with that. But suddenly a traditional ceremony occurred to my mind, and it's in Chinese. It is called 抓周. Um, After the baby born, maybe 1 or 2 months, uh, that he or her relatives get together and put he or she on a table. Yeah, and there are many things the students on the table. It's of the
Alice, you need to repeat. You need to repeat that. We missed that bit. Put the baby on the table and then.
there are many things on the table, like or music instruments uh, on behalf of jobs in the future of the baby, and to see which one he or she choose to take in, in her hand. Yeah, and
So
to
you
see.
put stuff around the baby and you see which one the baby reaches for.
Yeah, and maybe in the future she will become he or she will become some very famous person.
Engineer.
Yeah.
Or wow. Okay, interesting. Okay, but did you have anything to add to our discussion today about culture as a character in a story?
Um, uh, the the lecture, there's a picture in the lecture reminded me of something I have learned in Hainan University for my bachelor degree. It's iceberg, the picture of the iceberg, cultural element, the intangible elements and the tangible elements. We do have a class. We did have a class called intercultural communication. Yeah, it's in business. Tell you how to uh, communicate with foreign clients and how to sell your products to the foreign clients according to their culture. And when we were learning this picture, we matched the intangible we match the tangible elements with the intangible elements to see how the tangible elements represent the intangible elements to analyze how we can use those cultural elements to sell our products. Yeah,
Okay,
and it's very familiar when I see this picture. Yeah.
thank you. Great. Salim, do you want to add to
Yes,
our
doctor.
discussion?
Just I would like to ask a question. In fact, a question to you, doctor. So, my question is: whoever want to write about a story, a novel, anything, any literary work, do you think it's important for him to know the environment? Since I know that writing about a story, for example, let's go back to Sinan Anton, the Washing Corpse. I have read the whole novel. In fact, it was interesting. And in the point of my view is, if you want to write about something, this should go through the channel of knowing the or being familiar with the culture first, in order to be able to give a real picture about what you are writing. Thank you. Am I right or not, Sadiq?
Yeah. So you know, every writer has the prerogative or the poetic license. We talk about that to express their craft in the way they choose, and to express the narrative in the way they want to represent it. But I agree with you. There is an element. There is a bit slight contentious element when the writer is not from that community. How well does the writer capture the values, the nuances of that community? So we can talk about that more later when we talk about Sinan Anton's The Corpse Washer. But there's two sides to it. On the one hand, that story brings to light the way Muslims wash their corpse through fiction, right? Because it's a global sensation. The novel has been translated into many languages from Arabic, and the idea is now, part of the discourse through fiction. It's part of the world discourse. More people are reading about it. More people are getting involved in the discussion of that story and learning more aspects about the Muslim culture through the story. But on the other hand, how well does he represent the society, the people, right? Does he come with a insider's perspective or an outsider's perspective? I suppose that's where critics like yourself can come in. You can read the text and you say, yeah, I mean, he did a great job here, but then there are other aspects that he missed about the culture. So that's your role as the reader, as a critique. Okay.
But as if he was imam. And he's a Christian man, in fact. So I have read about his biography. He's a Christian man. But when you read his novel, you think that he's just like an imam, just like a religion man, yeah, just like a mullah. He's doing everything. He's following all these procedures of washing, and even telling some the dua and some supplications as if he's a Muslim, as he's a mullah. So it's astonished me, I was so surprised by that, in fact.
But the character Javad, the character that he uses to narrate the story, he must have done a lot of research to make Javad come to life like that. So I suppose that's another responsibility of the writer. Yes, you have poetic license, you can write what you want, but you still need to do your research. So in answer to your question, the writer needs to understand the environment that the story is set in. If the story is set in a particular country, the writer needs to know the environment very well, do his research. And of course, he must have done the research, right? Otherwise, the story will have lots of gaps that readers will be like, oh, this doesn't make sense. Thank you so much, Shah. Did you want to add to the discussion?
I just want to say that for just now, remember that we kind of hear about monsoon effect from the culture as an adaptive force. I think it's really interesting for me, and I'm still processing anyway. So that's why I'm like focusing and everything. So I'm very much interested in the fan diagram. Do you remember? Yeah.
Took a picture. It's in the WhatsApp group. So
Yeah,
if you want to explore.
Thank you. So
So that element of culture being dynamic, there is a kind of, it's not just static, it's not just stuck there, and the assimilation, and there is that element of the culture. We can explore more if you're interested for your own research. Yeah, thank you. Ruby?
Oh, that was an interesting discussion you had with Salim about the authors, not the author, but my first question is how much work, like is it the author's job to make the environment that he may not come from, but to make the environment as familiar as possible? Because there's a lot of debate in India about Anglo-Indian writers writing about people from the lower class. and then some Indians will say, oh, that do not represent how we live, because you went to Cambridge and whatnot lah. So I'm really interested, how much is it the author's job, and like where he came from, does it matter in the text? I wonder.
I mean, to me, a simple answer would be, it's a craft and he's telling a story, but in order for the story to come to life, he needs to do the groundwork. He needs to know the people that he represents, right? So that the people feel as if they are truly represented, that their voices are truly heard through these stories. But if he or she doesn't do a good job at representing them, it will backfire. He will get lots of criticism. So you see that in not just novels but also in films, when directors try to tell a story, or script writers try to tell a story from a particular community's perspective. If it doesn't hold water, if it's not reflective of the actual community and the society, the critiques will definitely be strong in terms of criticisms against the movie. Same thing. I think that's our role as readers, as students of literature. That's our role. When you write your essays, when you do your criticisms, your reviews, that's your role. Don't just agree with what's there. Give your opinions, and why is the writer failing you as a reader. For instance, why do you feel the writer has failed you? Which parts does the writer fail you in terms of representation? You can do that, but evidence. You must provide evidence from the text, right? You cannot just simply say this is a bad story or this is a lousy text. Tell me why it's lousy. Tell me why it's bad. Tell me why you feel it's not good. You must be able to justify that, Right, thank you. And lastly, Fuzla?
Based on the guest lectures now, I was interested in the part where she talked about the third space, about the hybridity, because I can relate to that in sense where my mom is from Kedah, and my dad is from Terengganu, which is East Coast. So they have different cultures, right? And I kind of adopt like some of it from my dad and then some of it from my mom, and then living in KL, going to schools with different races. And also when I was in UIA, we also have international students. So, there's a lot of things that I adopt from my environment. So,
And do you have the freedom to adapt and adopt to different cultures?
In a sense, yeah. Like, I think it's also like my personality where I don't just accept things. So that also kind of like, you know, it kind of, you know, shaped me into who I am. So yeah.
So I think based on today's discussion, it's fair to assume that we all have an opinion about culture, and our opinion is as unique as our backgrounds, right? It's not one size for all of us here. We all have a very unique perspective. So it's going to be fun to see how we bring that opinion and worldview into the text that we read, and how that colors our reading. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts when we start reading the stories. When we start to do a critical review of the stories that we read. So thank you so much for this is an extended session, but I hope it's been productive. Next week we will finish up with our comparative literature in the 21st century. You will do the review of the article on world literature, and then after that we will start preparing for your first assignment. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you next week at 2:00 for Salim, Shah, Ruby, Fuzla, and Amy, as she's watching this later. Ramadan Kareem, we will be
Thank you so
celebrating
much.
the month
Jazakallah
of
khair.
Ramadan on
Inshallah.
Tuesday. Alice, we will be starting our fasting, our month of fasting on Tuesday, inshallah, next week. So I'll be seeing you all in the month of Ramadan. So let's hope we make full use of this month and we reap the reward and you know, and enjoy it. I hope it's a month filled with barakah and we enjoy it and we can be
Inshallah.
productive, inshallah. Yeah. So make dua for all of us that God gives us grace and allows us to do our responsibilities and still enjoy the month of Ramadan, inshallah. All right. So all the best to you. I will see you next week. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Everyone, happy fasting.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy fasting.